Hi, YouTube. Welcome to Gamer Thoughts, episode 2, the show where I just kind of talk about what I've noticed in gaming this week and what I've been feeling and thinking. Today, I want to talk about live service games and if they really are as big of a problem as we think they are. So recently, there was a game that was launched called Babylon's Fall. It was a combination of the Square Enix and the Platinum Games studios, and it absolutely failed. We're talking less than 10,000 concurrent players on Steam, which, is quite an odd thing, considering how big a lot of these recent launches have been, and Square Enix and Platinum Games are both huge studios. Now, if you go into any of the trailers for this game and you look at the comments on YouTube sections, most of them basically just come out and say, oh, as soon as I saw this was a live service game, I knew it was going to be garbage. Or, oh, Square Enix and Platinum make great games, but if they're going down the live service route, they've lost all my business. And there seems to be this huge push against live service games. Now, I'm not necessarily a huge fan of a lot of things that happen with live service games. Monetization, microtransactions, the story getting dragged out over 10 years. However, I play two live service games very frequently, Genshin Impact and Final Fantasy XIV. Now, a lot of people, when they hear MMO, may not think live service, but that's what it is. It's a live service game where you have a subscription that you're paying, and you still are paying for the game. Now, so what makes these live service games successful where other ones are treated with such contempt? I think there's maybe a different line for everyone as to where they say, oh, I will participate in a live service or I won't participate in a live service. And they view different live service games as okay, such as MMOs, whereas gacha mechanic games riddled with microtransactions are not okay. Square Enix themselves have released several successful live service games. Apart from their MMOs, they have mobile games like Final Fantasy Bravely Envious that does really well. On the flip side of the argument of live service games, we have games that are not live service at all, that people are hailing as a really big deal. We talked about Elden Ring last week and how well it's doing. A lot of creators and a lot of reviewers have jumped and said, oh, well, this is what happens when a studio is finally willing to release a complete game at launch that has everything in it. The thing about that statement is it's not necessarily rare that that happens. In the last year alone, we've had Horizon Forbidden West. We've had Ghostwire Tokyo this last week. We had It Takes Two last year. We had Kena Bridge of Spirits. I can think of several games that have been released recently that were full games upon release. No DLC. There wasn't microtransactions in them. They were full released games. So to say that everything is a live service game these days isn't necessarily accurate. There are still lots of full releases coming out, and there are ones coming on the horizon within the next 6 months. But there seems to be this stigma that everything is live service and that there's no true games anymore. However, there's lots of indications that that's not necessarily correct. I think for me, what it comes down to with live service games, and there was a recent interview with a game dev that talked about this, is whether or not the live service game puts gameplay first. I think a lot of times when we see a live service game get launched, very much so at the forefront is the microtransactions and the nickel and diming of players, and making you feel like there is no way to progress without spending money. I look at recent games like Lost Ark. Lost Ark had a huge successful launch. And in the beginning of the game, people were putting 300-400 hours into it and saying, wow, this game's incredible, I love this. And then they got to tier 3 honing, and everybody is instantly saying, oh, this is a bad game. It's all about monetization. There's no way to progress. Now, admittedly, I don't play Lost Ark, so I don't know how bad the situation is. But clearly there was something that made people play it for 400 hours. And I think that was good game design and good gameplay. Unfortunately, the game design towards the end focused on the microtransactions and pushes you in the in-game to spend money. I think when we forget the gameplay piece in favor of the microtransactions and monetizations, that's where the line gets drawn on a live service game and it being a problem. I think about Final Fantasy XIV as a live service game, and nothing is really locked behind a microtransaction other than the fact that you have to buy the game and pay your sub. In terms of gameplay, you have access to everything. You have access to all the content, the raids, the dungeons, all of those things. Whereas some live service games want to lock that behind, oh, well, you need to spend money to get these characters or get this gear so that you can proceed. And I think that's where the line should be drawn. Not necessarily that a live service game is bad, but there are some really bad monetization practices in live service games. That being said, those are just my thoughts. Do you think live service games are a scourge on the planet? Do you think we should never see them again? Do you draw the line at DLC and not being willing to pay more than the $60 when the game came out? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. What kind of games you're playing? Are you playing any live service right now? Or are you playing only games that are full upon release? I would love to hear your thoughts. These have been my gamer thoughts. As always, much love. We'll see you next week.